Hey everybody, this is Andy Wheelock, and this is the Coffee with a Geek program, where we talk about ed tech things over a cup of coffee if you'd like one. Coffee's optional, but I do have a coffee mug today, and this is one of my favorites. This is, we've had a lot of labs in this house, and was kind of one that we had when we had our Nell around. She was a great black lab. If you've never had a black lab, you need to have a black lab. They're just wonderful dogs. With me today is from Canada. We've finally gone international, and I think we went to India last time, so we're a little closer this time.
Yeah, a little.
I have Jen Giffen. I always stumble on that way. I just asked you your name. And Jen, I met Jen at the Canada Connect conference, and we're going to talk about that. It was a great conference. This is the second time I've been there, and I really will dig into that. But Jen is a digital literacy resource teacher for the York Region District School Board, just north of Toronto, Ontario. We always love Toronto. You got your bachelor's in education, English in education, curriculum teaching and learning at OISE. Sketchnoter. You are my second Coffee with a Geek interview with a Sketchnoter, so I've been really digging into that. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that. Sure. You're a Google for Education certified educator. You're an Apple teacher. You have a keen interest in ed tech, and is always looking for new tools to enhance the learning environment to engage students. Yeah. You spend your free time playing with your 3 little boys, so that really means you don't have free time, right?
Zero.
And you're
after 10.
Coaching and participating in competitive cheerleading. That's really awesome. And to get in touch with you, it's at Virtual GIF, GIFF, and virtualgif.com is your website. So, wow. So I got a lot in a short period of time. So Jen, maybe just let's start off with, did I miss anything with your educational journey? So give us the details.
My mug. I'm representing Canada with my Tim Hortons mug.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, you cannot be a Canadian without one of those. So while you see it backwards, for any friends down south, when you come, go to Timmy's. It's the best.
It is. Tim Hortons is, we have them down here in the States, not everywhere. My daughter is in Georgia, and she's very upset they don't have any down there. So
yeah, they're awesome.
So good catch there with that one.
Yeah. Very good. No, but as far as my my education and that, no, I think you've got it all. Yeah, I went to Queen's for my undergrad in education, my B.Ed, and then I went to OISE, which is at the University of Toronto, for my master's in education. I finished that just before I had my first son. And now I sort of do AQ courses, and I do a lot of micro-credentialing here and there, hence my Google teacher, my Apple teacher certifications and that, because I think that's sort of the way to go now, more so than, I don't know how it works with you guys in the States, but here, at least in Ontario, if we want to get any additional qualifications, we have to apply. You get in, it's not difficult, but it's about $600-700 a pop, which is, I don't know, about $3.50 American these days. And you have to pay all this money. And I'm thinking, there's all this rich PD that I can get, and sometimes even more rich, not the rubber stamp, that I can get in other ways. So I'm really big into finding little MOOCs and to finding courses and credentials that way, building my PLN and having discussions like this. I think this can be just as rich than formal education can be.
It can be. And let's maybe dig into the Canada Connect conference. And we met there. You came to my session, and I was really happy to have you there. And what I loved about it is we shared out a Google Doc where people could contribute comments, and you were plugging away with throwing in some good comments and suggestions. And that really, to be honest with you, as a presenter, that's the first time we've done that. And it was really fun to kind of see that there was participation going on with the gang. So, but tell me about the conference. Did you present? Did you just attend sessions, and what did you walk away with from that?
Well, I'll tell you, with you and Melanie doing that instead of a view only, but a comment sort of only doc that we could all create. And I loved that. And I've actually used it since when I've done PD. Be like, hey, if you have anything to pop it in here, because I think it actually, it speaks to the collaborative nature of it. So thank you for that, but not only for doing it, but for inspiring that in my own practice. What I took away from the conference mostly was so I went to the one session where they talked about risk taking and can you do it? And my mom baked, and he kept like talking about this baking. At the end, he brought them out and they had crickets on the top. And he said, "Hey, do it." And I was sitting with Jennifer Casa-Todd at the time, who was another Canadian educator you may have heard of.
Yeah.
And Jen, yeah, she's great. She's fantastic. She actually works in York Catholic, the Catholic board near us. I'm in York Public. So we cross paths a fair bit. And so I was sitting beside her, an administrator on my board, and I'm like, I'm totally going to do it. And I bit in, I crunched it. It was not good. It did not go well. So no, it was good. I learned a lot actually. And it was the first time that I'd been away for that long at a conference. I've done a lot of Google summits. I've done a lot of conferences that weren't Edtech because I've only been in my Edtech kind of role as a DLRT since September. So I found it really rich, almost to the point that I was overwhelmed. Like I'd signed up for every session. No one had told me you should probably take one off a day to explore and network and that. So I think the most powerful thing was the networking, right? So I think I followed and was followed by over 100 new people in that 3-day span alone. So growing that was huge. I sketchnoted a bunch of the keynotes and I got retweeted on those and direct messaged on some of them by the keynote speakers in a couple of cases. So that was cool. I presented with my colleague, Joanna Bull, on HyperDocs, and it was really good. We found it, we were actually in the one room that was off sort of right beside the bathroom though. And so the hand dryers were really distracting at times. So I found that kind of funny. I connected with Rob Dunlop, who works for the district that organizes the event. And he was telling me all about his book. And then I went to see his keynote or his spotlight speech and made a lot of connections through that. Like got to know Kyle Kitchen, Melanie's husband, fairly well through that and a lot. So really it spoke to me as much about the content that I could speak to. And I could pull up my notes and say, oh yeah, and then I learned this and then I learned that. And I did a design thinking sprint that's encouraged me to build a vertical garden out of used water bottles. And that was Larissa Araj and Ariana Zane. Oh my gosh, her name escapes me. How does it? I'll find it. They're both Google innovators that work in TDSB. And they inspired me to do that through this design challenge that they ran. So that was great. But more than anything, it was about those connections that I made to grow that PLN. And that's really important to me in my role because it can be really siloed. There's 11 of us on our team, including my principal and the coordinator of my team and someone who's a ministry. So there's really only 8 of us. We all work with about 9 different schools and it's great, but experts. So when I don't know what, and one of my colleagues is in a session and they can't get to me, if I need to reach out for help, it's not the same as walking down the classroom. Oh, they're teaching, go to the next one. Okay, they can answer my question. So I need to be able to reach out quickly to people who are willing to share it and make those connections and grow your knowledge. And events like that absolutely do that. So that was really what I took away from it more than anything was the power of the network.
Yeah, I agree. And I really love, those, I think there was a lot of energy there with that conference. And, I think in tech conference, there certainly was, I think some real, passion, I think through the spotlight speakers that we saw. Again,
Absolutely.
Jennifer Casa-Todd and Kyle Kitchen spotlight sessions were great. Really, every spotlight session was good. Do you find in Canada, me being in the States, I see one perspective, but just from your experience in Canada, do you feel that passion is nationwide? Do you feel it's region-wide? Do you feel it's school-wide?
Well, I don't know if I can speak for all of Canada. It's pretty big, but I can probably, my lens is really more Ontario based, and in courses that I've taken here and the connections that I've made, I definitely think there's a passionate core that's in there, and we're moving forward. I'm finding there are fewer and fewer teachers who are reticent to technology and think, oh, it's a passing phase. I actually was working today with a teacher librarian who's going to be going back into the classroom almost full time next year, and has been in a library for 8 years and has barely touched technology from a classroom perspective. And she's like, can you tell me about Google Classroom? Can you tell me about Google Sites? And how do I do that? And so we sat down for about an hour and a half a couple of weeks ago, and she said, will you come back? And I went back, and the risks that she had taken, because she kept saying, I don't want to screw it up. I said, you can't really screw it up. We'll just revision history and we'll find it all again. And the risks that she's taking were so great. And we spoke a lot around, in her age too, right? She's very close to retirement, and she very easily could have been like, oh, I'm not going to do this. But I'm finding there's more and more teachers in general buying into the notion that tech can help us. And while it has its issues, we're not going to say, oh, the pencil, the lead can break, so we're not going to use it, right? They're realizing that it's here to stay. And it's not just, okay, we'll make the best of it. It's that, how can this really help me? And the minute you show them something, they have this passion to do it. I was at a school yesterday and I walked in. It was a leadership group. It was the department heads at a school I work with. And their head of phys ed, I walked in, he's like, oh no. And I was like, hi. And he's like, well, there goes all my sleep tonight. And he always blames me whenever I go in. I introduce these new tools or new ideas, and then it makes the world that much bigger, right? And that's what technology can do in terms of literally breaking down classroom walls, but seeing different ways to reach different students and personalize education, differentiate all that kind of stuff, right? So I'm definitely seeing more of that. I'm seeing the risk taking, and I'm seeing people embracing it at a level that's beyond the superficial.
So tell me, based on that, what are your projects that you're kind of into? What are the trends that you're following and you'd like to really maybe explore more?
I would like to find something to stop time for me and no one else, so that I can explore, because there's not enough hours in my day. So there's a whole bunch that I'm into, and I'm really about breadth more so than depth in anything that I've ever done in my life. So I'm not someone that's going to be the expert on this. I just have a lot. I'm a curator. Someone recently I met at a conference, and he runs an organization called the Mindshare Learning. And it's a lot about startups. And his role, I'm reading his card right now, is the chief digital curator. I'm like, that sounds amazing. That's what I wanted, because that's what I do. I curate all this information, right? I use the Pocket app when I see something that I want to read about. I throw it in my pocket. I read it before bed. And then I pin it to a board for here's my AR and VR I'm really into. I think that's something that's going to be huge in the next few years, if not already, in education. So how can we use that? That's something that I'm starting to dabble in. I love maker spaces. I actually was tweeting this afternoon about it. I was listening to the Edtech Takeout podcast with Jonathan Wiley and Mindy Kervin, and they had the people from their district on talking about makerspace challenges that they put on YouTube, and I automatically sent it to all of our teacher librarians who have makerspaces, and I said, you need to do these with the kids. And so that I'm really passionate about. I run, although it's about to go on hiatus for the summer, I think, a virtual teacher book club, and I have 4 different countries represented, and we just pick an ed book and say, we have a Voxer group and we talk on that, and then we have a flip grid for this book. It doesn't get the traction because we don't always have time with that, but at least I know I can engage in conversation around, and through that, we tweet it out, and this is our 3rd book. I just started a few months ago. I've had all 3 authors reach out to me, and now I feel I have a relationship with them. So again, that going always back to that network is great. I'm involved in our authentic student directed learning, which is a lot about student voice and choice. I was one of the project leads for that this year. And I was also, this morning we were working on something we're calling ML on Air. It's a way to engage schools into sharing, instead of having a showcase, but sort of virtually. We're looking at, okay, how can we do this so that we can see what everyone else is doing to inspire one another in our innovations in our school around modern learning and sort of 21st century learning. Modern learning is the term that we use in district. And so we're doing this sort of relay, so to speak, of, okay, here's a school, showcase what you did and move on, so that hopefully they can inspire other people to do similar things in their schools, or to light that or ignite that passion or fire in them for projects moving forward. So that's something else. I'm really big right now into reading about inquiry and inquiry-based learning. And it's not a new thing, but I'm reading Trevor Mackenzie's book. He's another Canadian. He lives in Vancouver. And his book is all about how to scaffold it so it can work in every subject area. And he's a secondary English teacher, and that's my background. So it really speaks to my heart. So that's something that I'm really into. I'm always into finding new ed tech tools. I'm huge into hyperdocs. I don't really go anywhere without creating a hyperdoc or at least a multimedia text set that people can get information from. So yesterday when I was in this thing where the guy was like, oh, not you again. So it's just a little grid so I can share it out. I took the course with Sarah and Lisa and Kelly, the hyperdoc girls, back in the fall. And again, that's sort of my micro-credentialing idea. And I really loved it. It taught me a lot about how to roll out not only to students, but looking at PD. And my big one now, so I'm going to ISTE. I'm going to ISTE. I'm so excited. So when I go to San Antonio, I'm the worst at picking any kind of information. Like looking at a schedule for a conference and like, okay, narrow it down, which one do you want to go to is like purgatory for me. And ISTE, it's 72 pages long. I spoke to my husband. He's like, are you okay? You look like you're going to have a stroke. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I was like full on anxiety attack. So
is this your first ISTE?
Yes, this is my first ISTE.
Congratulations.
So, thank you. Yeah.
It's overwhelming.
I'm at the point now, Andrew, where I really think I'm just going to go and let my feet guide me and like, hopefully serendipity will take over. And that's because I do believe a lot in things happen in a line for you. So there's just so much, and it's not normal. It's not like here's an hour block and here it's like, here's this and this overlaps with this and this there's just too much. I need to clone myself. I know. Because I don't think I'll sleep. I think that's what's going to happen. So like at Connect, I was running on 4 hours sleep a night.
Yeah, you're gonna meet a lot of people, and
I can't wait.
It's great.
Yeah, and there's a lot going there that I know, like Matt Miller, the Ditch That Textbook. So Matt and I connected.
I've interviewed him.
Oh, there you go. So he and I connected through his Ditch Summit that he did back in December. I sketched all the sessions for him, and then he tweeted them out and then included them in his final blog post, which got me like ridiculous traction on Twitter. I owe him big time. So he's going to be there. So it'll be nice. Like I call it my IRL, like my in real life meetings with like him. All these people who would like to me are these edu-famous people. And,
I know, you got the biggies.
I know. So we'll see. Dave Burgess is another one that I read TLAP as our first teacher book club. So yeah, I'm into a lot. There's a lot of different things. I've always got a lot of balls in the air, which is to a fault sometimes. But I'm just really passionate about education. Like I constantly listen to podcasts. My commute, because I go school to school, is a podcast. Everyone's like, oh, have you heard this music? Have you watched this movie? I'm like, no, I'm listening to podcasts or I'm on Twitter. Like, education is not only my profession, it's my passion. It's my hobby. I do it and I love it. And some people say, oh, you're a workaholic. I'm like, well, not really, because a lot of this isn't like my job 9 to 5. If I don't do it, I'm not going to get in trouble, but I just love to do it. So I do.
Yeah, it really is kind of like, putting your hand on like a power stream, it's just, you get all this great stuff. So, it looks like you're pretty much like me. You're just following all these amazing trends and trying to actually maybe pare down some of the good ones. But you mentioned sketchnotes. Let's talk about that real quick, because I just started sketchnoting and I really love it. And I really I think, we live in this, highly icon-based society now.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
And I think sketchnotes really taps into it, but I think it does more than that, because I think it organizes your ideas and puts some creativity back into education, which I think, I think we've here in the States, forgive me for saying this, but we focused a lot on assessment and curriculum. And I think
Common Core.
we forgot about the creativity piece of it.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
I think it's really great for not only students, because certainly they need that creative piece. And it also, I think, taps into their kind of brains with technology, but I really think teachers benefit from, I think adults could benefit from just drawing, and it doesn't have to be the perfect drawing. And
that's what I love about sketchnotes. Like, I'm not an artist. In fact, it was only about 6 weeks ago for the first time I referred to myself as an artist, and kind of by mistake. So I started sketchnoting back. I probably have here, let me see. Yeah, I do. This was my little book. It was one that like my Nana gave me. It's just full of blank pages. And I was reading a book, and the book was called A More Beautiful Question. I thought, wow, this is a really neat book. I want to capture this. I'm going to try like writing notes on it. And I thought, I've seen the sketchnote thing. I'm going to try it. So like my first sketchnote looked like, can you see it? Like that.
That's good. That's not bad. I like that.
So I was like, okay, well, whatever. I'm just going to play with, letters and play with some shapes. And I don't really know how to draw. And then I realized, okay, I need to actually practice my drawing. So my sketch notebook, which I thought was only going to have sketch notes, turned into doodles as well. So I'd just sit one day when I was, I can't just do one thing. So I'd be watching television or a movie with my husband, and then I'd be just sitting doodling. And for me, it's all about copying. So I think if you actually looked at the analytics of my Google, it would probably say my most searched thing is easy draw blank. And I try to find things and then I draw. So like easy draw book, easy draw. What are some things light bulb, things that I draw a lot. And then I was in a staff meeting in our district wherein we were talking about truth and reconciliation with the Indigenous peoples of Canada. And it is an important issue. It was one that I wanted to pay the respect to that it deserved. But so often in meetings, it's easy just because your computer's in front of you to get on and answer emails. And I thought, no, I've got to shut this down. But I also know I can't just focus on one thing. So I happened to have my sketchbook there that day. I went and I got it out of my office. I set out all my markers. People laughed at me, but we have a couple other sketchnoters. Debbie Donsky and Roy and Lee work with me. They're great follows at Dr. Debbie Donsky, I think, and at Roy and Lee on Twitter. They sketched. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to look weird or disrespectful in this. And so I sketched. In that case, I sketched. Can you see it? That. So it's this sketch just about the Indigenous peoples of Canada, where the language comes from, Indigenous versus Aboriginal, and we have 7 lost generations because of these schools, and it was heartbreaking, the whole thing. And I came home that night and I retained a lot of that information, and I had it on my island. And my husband came in. He's like, "Oh, what's this?" And I said, "Oh, we had a staff meeting. We talked," and all of a sudden we engaged in this like 45-minute discourse all around the Indigenous peoples of Canada, which we never would have had otherwise. So you speak about what it does, but that conversation, when I sketch in sessions, if I took a picture of my notes and tweeted them out, no one would care. If I'm sketching and I have a stranger beside me at a conference, they're like, "Oh, what do you do? Oh, can I see that? Oh, can I take a picture of that? This is awesome." The conversation is amazing. For me, I've read stats that it's like you have up to, I think it's 60-something% retention with information. You have your comprehension can increase by, they say, 22 to 30%. And wow. It's a really cool community. Like people come out and they love it. So when I was doing it for Matt Miller and his Ditch Summit, I had a girl reach out and say, "Can I print some of these and put them in my classroom?" I'm like, sure. That's weird. Random girl from Iowa or wherever she was from. And so I actually created a folder and I made it like a view only, public to anyone on the web, tweeted out the link a few times, and people had taken them. And through that, Sylvia Duckworth, the famous sketchnoter of all,
biggie. Yeah.
She reached out to me, and she's now a dear friend of mine. Like, we are rooming together at a Google Summit in 2 weeks. So, and we're presenting at that summit. So she's from Toronto. She's awesome. And we reach out. So yesterday she was doing something for Edtech team, and she does all of hers digital. I do mine analog. And she was like, "Hey, Jen, can you answer a couple of these questions that we had tweeted in beforehand? They're about analog, and I'm not sure that I could give them the sort of same depth that you could." I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." So the community is really, really great. So if you're just starting, what I would suggest is just go and do it, like sketch as you can. Roy and Lee, the coordinator of my team and a wonderful Canadian educator, he did something in March called Doodle a Day with the hashtag Doodle a Day. And every day just went out and said, "Now draw this." And to me, it was at the end of that month, and we were out for lunch as a team. And I looked at him and I was talking, and that was the day that I referred to myself as an artist, talking to him. And all of a sudden I was taken aback. So that's the first time in my life I've ever identified that way. And I said, "Rory, and that's because of you. That's the practice that you made me go through." So the same way an athlete would train, you have to train your brain to sort of see things. So now I know about shadowing. Now I know about framing. Now I know, and I look at the world differently. Like if I look at something, I'm like, how would I draw that? I see shapes. So David Gray has his visual alphabet, and it's everything can be drawn from, I think there's 12 different shapes on it. So I look at things, I'm like, how do I see the shapes in that, and how would I draw it? So I really exercise my brain differently. I put it almost akin to learning a different language in the same way that you would sort of the neuroplasticity in that kind of activity. So, and then now I go and I do things. So a more recent one, we had a whole thing on mental wellness on my board. So that's one I did on breaking the stigma of mental health. And
wow.
Yeah. So, and that's what I do. I sit and I'm like, I'm going to draw. And recently on Mother's Day, actually, my son, my 7-year-old, is in first grade. He wrote a thing for like Happy Mother's Day when his grandmothers, my mom and mom-in-law, were coming over, and he wrote, "Happy Mother's Day. There'll be a tea party at 12 o'clock in the backyard." I think he wrote something like that. And in it, beside tea party, he drew a teacup, and he said, "Look, Mommy, I'm sketchnoting." And I was like, "Oh,
that's awesome!"
Awesome. So it's the idea that we do draw unabashedly as children, and we need to get that back, because it really does exercise a part of our brain that we don't do enough. Like we don't say, "Oh, I've learned how to read now, so or I've learned how to use a computer, so I'm going to stop writing with a pen." Like, but somehow we've done that with the visual literacies. Like we learned how to read and write, so we stopped drawing. And I think we've really done a disservice.
I agree. Well, I don't have my sketch notebook with me, but I do have I was working on trying to get my self-portrait.
That's good. People are hard. I took months to find people. That's awesome.
Oh, well, it's a start, but I thought, it's got more hair than I do in person, so I like it, so
Yeah,
that's the important part.
that's funny.
Okay, so one more question before our Speed Geek questions, and this is
Okay.
probably a good one to end on. And I was reading your blog or your website,
Yeah.
and you had a post called "What Does Great PD Look Like?"
Yeah.
So can you talk about that one?
Sure. I'm actually currently in a course called it's IICTI, the Integration of Communication, no, the Integration of Information and Communication Technology in Instruction. And they said, go and write this piece. And I always find it funny in courses like that about integrating technology that is just write and give to an audience. And in this case, there's the instructor and 3 other people in it of 4. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put it on my blog. I'm going to put it out there and vulnerable. I actually did something in November. Do you know, what's it called? NaNoWriMo? No, NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing Month. Basically, you have to write 1,200 words a day every day, and you'll get, at the end of the month, you'll have what is a novel. It may not be a great novel, but if you've ever said, I'm going to write a novel, that's how you do it. And I thought, I want to write a novel, but I've always wanted to be into blogging because I think it's really great metacognitive practice. And so I said, I'm going to blog every day in November. And I did, and it was exhausting. At the very end of November, we lost my grandfather. He was 5 weeks shy of his 99th birthday. So I had family I had 9 men, my cousins, living in my house at the time. It was I'm like, I'm going to be at like 1 a.m. and blogging. But it was really great. And it was actually earlier this week, I thought, I haven't blogged in so long. But to go back to your question, this one I put out there, and it was the one that I most recent one that I've done, and the one that I've done, I hadn't done one in a while, and it actually got a fair bit of traction. I was kind of surprised because I just put it out there. But I talked, we were asked to read a whole bunch of articles, as you are in these sort of courses, and they really spoke to me, and they thought, well, what does good PD look like? And given my role as a digital literacy resource teacher, is sort of akin to an Edtech coach or an instructional technology coach, and I thought, well, what do I want from PD? Like when I go in, and I need to reflect more on that. So when I'm delivering this PD, I'm honoring that kind of learning in my audience. So I talk about the different MOOCs, like those massive open online courses I think are great. Like George Couros does his on the innovator's mindset, which I think is fabulous. I talk about having YouTube channels to put on short tips. We have one in district, and I do one myself. My YouTube channel is called Tech Tips with Virtual GIF, and they're just little, usually less than 2-minute videos. And I think that's a great way to learn, that it's just like little blurbs. It doesn't have to be sit down and learn. We need the just-in-time learning. We need learning that's flexible for our own schedules, right? Not everyone, we were talking this week on my team, we said, okay, we're gonna offer them after school. And a few of us were vehemently against it because we thought, it's not fair. Like a few years ago, I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to have the knowledge. I wanted to have the opportunity, but I couldn't because I had 3 little boys under 5 years old. So I couldn't be out after school. My husband, has to commute in. And so we're talking about equity. And I also talk about commitment in that one about, when we're going to have these training sessions, why is it one-offs? Why aren't we getting people to commit and to grow that community and to commit to initiative, to really see it through so it's not as fabricated as sometimes it can be, right? That one-off. And you assume that this happened. Did they really take it back to the class? Because we can offer it till the cows come home, but we need to see that impact on students. I also really like the idea of involving students, whether it be their work or them in person, in that learning. I think if we're going to really do PD for teachers about what's best for students, then we need a student voice in there. And if you don't have it, then I think we've missed the mark. Majira talks about speed dating to learn apps. So having students come in and sit and teach an app to a group of teachers at a staff meeting, and then going through and almost having the dating game, but no, actually you're dating the app, not the student. So it's not weird, she says. But you go through and you learn about the apps from a student's perspective and hear their voice, which I think is great. Today I interviewed students who won our slam poetry contest. They were the elementary, so 3 in grade 8 and 1 in the 7th grade. And they talked to me about the writing process and how they do it and where their passions come from. And I learned a lot as an English teacher. I taught English 14 years in a classroom. I thought, wow, I never really considered it that way. So it made me think, how often are we inviting that voice in? And then I talk a lot about making learning visible. So I talked earlier about this ML on Air, which I actually, the big announcement, I actually just applied to the Google Innovator Academy for Washington.
Ooh,
And
nice.
it's, yeah, I'm like, kind of nervous about it, but we'll see. Like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, right?
Sure.
And I'm basing it on the model of this thing that we're doing. Kim Polishuk and I, Kim is a Google Innovator herself. She and I work together in York Region. She's another great follow on Twitter at Kim Polishuk, or Kim, right? Yeah, she Kim or Kimberly? I think she's Kim. And Lambert, Ariana Lambert, going back to earlier, that's her last name for my design sprint. I knew it would come.
You got it. Yeah.
I knew it would come. At any rate, this idea of, okay, let's do something. So past the scope on Periscope, they do it that they'll have like prompts and they say, okay, sign up for your 15 minutes. And in that 15-minute window, talk about what you do. But for me, it was more about including that student voice in it. So it's not just a teacher saying, I've done this, but come into my classroom and see my kids learning in real time. Of course, taking into account all the privacy issues around that. And I love pineapple charts, right? The idea of putting a chart up in your staff room and saying, hey, here's what I'm teaching today. Feel free to come in at this time. And for me, that's not only about seeing like good practices and here's technologies I'm using, but I loved it because we get teachables in secondary school in Ontario, and mine are English and math. So I'm really like at polar ends of the spectrum. And I taught a program once that had the same kids, period 1 and 2, English and math back to back. Some days I did double English, some days I did double math, some days, I did both of them. And, some days I would do a little bit of math, break it up a little bit English and math again. And I was amazed at what days that I would run it. So like English, 10-minute break, math. The kids would walk in second period sometimes as different kids. So whether they loved the English and then they came in turtled because they were terrified of the math, or vice versa. Like, right, they were like turtled the whole English class and then they come in like raring to go into math. So for me, that pineapple chart too is as much about seeing personalities and the way that students are learning and looking and reflecting on, well, what is it that in that case they're doing in that math class or the science class that pulls that kid out of the shell? Is it only content, or is there something about the structure or the layout or even the class dynamic here to really understand that whole child? So it really is a lot about that for me. So while we have other, so that, the Google EDU on Air is great, but it doesn't always include that student voice. And that's what I want to see. And that's a lot about what my innovator package is sort of all about too. So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. All right. It is now time for the Speed Geek question. So I'm going to bring up my spinning wheel of Speed Geekdom.
Okay.
And here we go. You get 3 of them, and they can be short answer and just knock them out of the park. Something fun.
I'll try to do short.
Here's the tough one. Name your favorite educational blog.
Eric Kurtz, Control-Alt-Achieve, hands down.
Oh, amazing.
That is my number one go-to. Amazing. Love his. Followed closely by the Cult of Pedagogy. I really like hers too. And I follow her podcast more. So Eric's, if I need something done, it's the one that I make sure I get. And I love his newsletter that follows it up to the fact, like, here's what I put out, here's what I've taken in, and here's like, it's just, if you don't follow it, you must. I tell, I don't think I ever not talk about Eric.
I know. I do not know when he sleeps. He's just.
You know what? I was listening to a podcast last week and someone said that. They asked when he sleeps. He goes, you know what? I'm only about Google. So when you have that singular focus, it does make it easier. It's what we talked to earlier, right? That breadth versus depth. So he can go deep and draw probably from other. If we're talking about makerspaces 1 minute and then inquiry-based learning, they're so, well, maybe not they're opposite, but you know what I mean? You're not going to draw on the same thing. But if I've already written a post about Google Docs and a feature comes out in Google Slides, then you can probably cross-reference them. So that's what I've heard, but I agree. I don't know when he sleeps.
Yeah. Okay, here comes question number 2. Are you a gamer, and what's your game?
I really like euchre. Does that count?
Sure, why not?
I'm a card player. I know I'm not a gamer, probably because I have 3 little boys and a husband who would game if we had a system. So if we did have one here, I'm sure everyone would. I used to love Tetris and Dr. Mario, so I was big into the original Nintendo systems. But no, I'm not a gamer, and proudly never got into Candy Crush.
Have you ever seen Ali Carr-Chelman's work about boys and gaming? It's pretty fascinating stuff. It's a great TED Talk if you've never seen it. It's called Ali Carr-Chelman, and it's using games to re-engage boys in education. It's a 2010 TED Talk, but it's a pretty interesting watch. I would definitely recommend it, especially since you have boys. So
I will do that as I treadmill PD. That's one of my other things that I do. I go on my treadmill and I have the leaf to my dining room table, and I put my computer on it, and then I either jog or walk quickly, and I watch educational videos, or I participate in Twitter chats. But you know what, in an hour I can walk 5K, so that's a good
I know, isn't it great? You get
3 miles in
while you exercise. I do it riding my lawnmower, mowing
Right?
the lawn.
See?
That's a good one too.
And I can usually get 3 TED Talks in an hour. So
all right, here goes your last question. Oh, it came up with the same one. Come on.
No,
You're supposed to take away the questions. Yes. What is your favorite social network? I think I know.
Yeah, Twitter for sure, for professional. And for personal use, I'm on Instagram. I really like Instagram. I'm sort of getting tired of Facebook, but yeah, Instagram I really like because it doesn't have the drama. And I like to see all the pictures.
All right.
The one you didn't ask, and I was all ready. Can I show you my prop?
Sure.
Star Trek, Star Wars, Harry Potter.
Oh, you've
Harry
got
Potter.
the wand. All right.
All the way, yeah. Went to the Wizarding World, bought the wand. Love it.
See, that one's a tough one for me. I don't know if I've revealed this, so this will be the big reveal. But I grew up a Star Wars kid, so
yeah.
But Harry Potter was definitely a huge, huge.
No, listen. I love Star Wars, and I really like Star Trek, but straight to my heart, Harry Potter. Straight to my heart.
Stuff. All right. Well, Jen, thank you so much. It looks like I'll see you at ISTE, so we'll have to do maybe a Periscope session at ISTE. So
I would love that. I would love that. Thanks for having me on, Andrew. Great.
It's a great conference, so we'll definitely connect there.
I'm really excited.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.